Truly do appreciate it. All right, more on this. Let's bring in Douglas Holtz-Eakin, American Action Forum president and former CBO director, and Phil Kerpen, Unleash Prosperity Principal. Really do appreciate you gentlemen joining us. Let's start with you, Douglas. The read on the market here, I really think politically, the president's going to need to get the price of gasoline down if he wants to do well in the midterms. That's going to be a key pocketbook issue. It also helps with inflation and everything else. What's your read on the market today, the sell-off, and what the president can do to drive down the cost of gasoline?
Well, I think the sell-off really reflects the higher yields you saw on bonds. That's a concern over the inflation reports we got. It's a concern over the direction of the Fed with the handoff to the new chairman, Kevin Warsh. That gives some uncertainty that will have to get settled over the next couple of months. And, you know, the solution to the gasoline price hike is lower global oil prices, and that means opening the Strait of Hormuz. And it really is that simple. The question is, what does the president have in the way of leverage on Iran to get it open at this point after his meetings with the Chinese? And that's definitely worth watching.
Phil, the economy, though, is fundamentally strong, and certainly compared to Joe Biden. I mean, I got this graphic here. Inflation under Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. I mean, the fundamentals are certainly way better with Donald Trump. And I find it interesting as we look at this graphic here. You know, the price of oil was a goal of the Democratic Party. They wanted higher gas prices. They set a policy to make gas and oil more expensive. Donald Trump is having to deal with the crisis in Iran and making sure, you know, the world doesn't blow up with nuclear bombs, but it'll come back down. It's just a matter of when. But the world economy, the U.S. economy, I should say, is far better under Donald Trump than it was under Joe Biden.
Well, I think that's definitely true, Jason. We've got much better regulatory policy. We've got much better tax policy. We've got even some discipline on the spending side with a lot of the downsizing that we've seen in the federal agencies. So the fundamentals in terms of policy are really good, but we have this price shock right now. And of course, you know, energy is an input into everything. And so you've got people who are rattled. We're now seeing, we saw bonds routed not just in the U.S., but globally, because everyone was sort of hoping that there would be a big breakthrough with the President's summit with Xi in Beijing. We didn't necessarily see that, which means we don't know how much longer this price shock is going to go on. And now you have this central bank policy risk that they may not be able to see through the price shock and they may start raising rates, which I think would be a really big mistake. I don't think making credit tighter will solve the problem of there not being enough energy available. I think it will just be sort of inducing recession for the purpose of demand destruction to bring down a price, which only makes our problems worse. We do need to end this war one way or another. We need to get that strait open. That's really the only solution to this energy shock. And I think the best thing from a policy standpoint that could happen is if when Warsh gets on the job, he says, look, we are going to see through this price shock. We're not going to raise rates and make credit more expensive as a way to try to fight high oil prices.
Douglas, the numbers month after month on retail sales have been awfully strong, particularly for this time of year. What do you make of that?
I'm really pleased by that, to be honest. The 1 weak part of the economy has been good sales. If you look at fourth quarter data, durable goods were down. First quarter data, durable and non-durable goods are down. 2 straight months of strong retail sales. Makes you feel a lot better about where the consumer is, and we'll get to reports next week on the pulse of the consumer. You know, the business part has been very strong, carrying the economy. You get a little help from the consumer side. We're going to see the growth rate go faster than the 2 points that we saw in the first quarter.
Phil, I want to ask you, particularly given your background and your expertise here, one thing, if we look at, we've got a graphic here about the number of workers, federal workers. You know, they have shed some hundreds of thousands of federal workers. I think the number is, you know, in the 400,000 less federal workers than compared to Joe Biden. So we lose hundreds of thousands of federal workers. Has anybody even noticed? Has anybody even said, oh my goodness? Because I remember reading through the jobs reports month after month after month. Usually in the top 3 sectors, it was growth in government and government employees. Now it's plummeted. And President Trump, I got to tell you, for the first, whatever, 16 months of his second term, one of the best things he has done is gotten rid of hundreds of thousands of federal workers because nobody knows the difference, and it does save money to us as taxpayers.
Yeah, I don't think many people have perceived any significant decline in the quality of services that they receive from the government. And you're right. I mean, for the most part, they're accomplishing everything they were accomplishing before and more with a lot fewer people. We did, of course, have that huge disruption with the government shutdown last year. But I think that as we've moved beyond that, it's become increasingly clear that the federal government can do everything it needs to do with a much lighter footprint in terms of full-time employees. All
right, Douglas, everybody talks about AI. You know, I think a lot of people out there are worried about it. Young people, old people, they're worried about it. They're worried about their jobs and their future. Elon Musk is calling it this tsunami that's coming at us, and we just don't realize it. AI is not just Google, but better. You know, it's going to fundamentally reshape the economy. It had to be part of the core discussion that was going on there in China. And certainly with the leaders of NVIDIA and Elon Musk and you know, Apple and others right there. How does it? I don't think that either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party has really grabbed hold of this. And I have long argued that the biggest unforeseen issue of 2028 presidential election is what are we going to do as a country about artificial intelligence? Nobody's really grabbed hold of it. They haven't taken a policy position saying this is what we need to do to make the most of it.
Well, I think they have to some extent. What you saw from the Biden administration right away was very much a let's stop the dangerous AI regulatory approach. And it was really, you know, stop and you have to ask our permission to do something. The Trump administration has taken a much lighter touch. They are allowing new developments and they're checking for the safety of them. They're working toward a regime where they can perhaps get some screening of next generation AI models. That's the next step in this. So I think there is a difference. The reality is that it will have its most profound impacts and greatest benefits when used by private sector firms. And they're the ones who are going to have to figure out the best way to deploy it and what jobs will be affected. It's going to create jobs as well as destroy jobs. I think that's not fully appreciated. And so it is smart to monitor the progress of AI. It's smart to see the impacts it's been having on the economy. And it's really smart not to move too quickly and choke off the benefits that it's going to produce.
Oh, they're huge benefits. Healthcare, I mean, there's so many good things that can happen to this, but there's also some wild cards in there. Phil, last word to you. I've only got 20 seconds or so.
Well, I'm very bullish on AI, and one of the things I was really happy to see coming out of the meetings in China is that we may get U.S. chips, NVIDIA chips, back into Chinese data centers. We want to be building the infrastructure, the chips, the algorithms. We want to lead the world, and I think the Biden approach where we tried to lock everything down and regulate it and control it and not let U.S. technology diffuse globally, it was a fool's errand, and it only ceded the lead to China. So I loved seeing what happened there, and I think that the positives are going to outweigh the negatives. Not that negatives don't exist. We've been through these sorts of upheavals in the past, like when we went from an agricultural to a manufacturing economy. There's going to be displacement, but on the whole, it's going to be really positive.
Certainly a discussion that's going to continue on. Douglas, Holtz-Eakin, and Phil Kerpen, thank you so much for joining us on Kudlow. Do appreciate it.